So hopefully you get where I'm coming from. Creative is not the new targeting. It's actually always been a part of that core targeting strategy. This is the B2B Performance Marketing Podcast by Webmarketer, here to help you make the right moves with your B2B advertising. No spin, no smoke and mirrors, just honest insights from the advertising frontline. Welcome back to the B2B Performance Marketing Podcast. I'm Louis.
And I'm Maelien.
If there's one thing that I keep hearing from advertising specialists over and over, it's the amount of control that we've been losing over time in the ad platforms. It was only a few years ago where we still had expanded text ads in Google search. They were sunset in late 2022, and with that format of ad, you had such a tight control over which headlines and which descriptions would actually show up in the search results. And then along comes responsive search ads, which have up to 15 headlines and up to 4 descriptions. And these get dynamically combined in the search results, which can lead to over 30,000 different unique variations. And it's exactly the same with keyword targeting. It used to be about actually matching the words and the letters in the target keyword with the words and the letters in what was being searched for. So this is called string-based targeting. And now it's more about matching the meaning of the target keyword with the meaning of the search, which we call semantic-based targeting. Now, while this might seem like quite a simple change, it means that the same target keyword can actually put ads in front of a much wider range of potential searches. And exactly the same thing can be said for black box solutions like Performance Max and Demand Gen. More potential combinations, a much bigger reach, but also a lot less control. And you know I don't mean that as advertising specialists, we're just handing it over to the machine now and sitting back. It's just that hyper-tactical micromanagement style of optimizing ads used to work in 2022, but it just doesn't work anymore. Today, it's about thinking much more holistically. So about the channels, knowing them and the systems, and also thinking about the performance marketing function as a whole too. So creative, messaging, strategy, technical, commercial, CRO, it's so important to be across all of these more and more over time.
Yeah, and to add to that, it's becoming more and more important to put the customer at the center of absolutely everything that we do. And that brings us onto the main subject of today. There's a phrase that Meta have been using more and more since 2024, and that is that creative is the new targeting. You talked about Google going broader, Lou, and Meta have been doing exactly the same thing here. Like when they dialed back on conversion tracking, making it a lot less customizable, and forcing you to pick from a list of standard things like leads, sign-ups, and purchases. The same thing happened when they introduced CBO, which is campaign budget optimization. And here, the budget gets applied at the campaign level rather than at the more granular ad set level. Then there was dynamic creatives, and more recently, they introduced Advantage Plus campaigns and optimization. This is very similar to Google's approach, where you give a lot of different variations of images and text, and then you allow the system to pick out what the best option here is to show. This idea of more combinations and less control is really a recurring theme across ad platforms. And the general link here is it's a lot less about forcing the platforms to do what you want at a granular level, and more about going back to those evergreen strategic marketing principles of the right message to the right person at the right time.
That's so funny, isn't it? Because, the ad platforms are evolving and they're getting more futuristic. And instead of kind of moving in with that and still trying to tightly control them, it's actually the old stuff that's the gold stuff. We're having to go back to that really foundational marketing strategy that is actually proving to work more and more as the technology is getting away from that old way of doing things. So the more technical the systems get, actually the more human we have to be as marketers. So today, you've still got to really know the ad channels as systems. You've got to know what data to look for. You've got to know what they're telling you and how to respond with your optimization. But you've also got to be really intentional about those old school, timeless skills of design and copywriting and how those influence the conversion rate and the commercial results as well. So this reminds me of an experience in my first ever job out of uni. So I graduated with a degree in graphic communication, graphic design, and I joined a B2B wholesaler as my first ever job. And I remember having a meeting with the MD, and he asked me, what value do you bring to the business in like a how much sales revenue can I associate to what you do kind of way? And the thing is, openness and transparency have always been a really, really important thing to me. But I'm sat there thinking, I'm a graphic designer. How the hell do I give a good answer here? I can't remember what I said, but I know for a fact that I didn't give a good answer. But what came from that meeting was, one eye always on that relationship between creative and commercial. It's something that I find absolutely fascinating. And if we look at that phrase from Meta, creative is the new targeting, there's a few things there that says to me. The first is on a point that we've already talked about a fair bit, which is putting much more care into the creative and the messaging rather than relying on that kind of micromanagement style optimization. It maybe suggests that the actual creative in the ad is being analyzed and being matched with audiences in the back end. And it also speaks to the fact that as audience definitions are getting wider, that means that our ideal customer profiles are a smaller segment of a much larger pool of people. So we have to rely on the creative and the messaging to speak directly to them to get them to engage. But for me, there is a bit of a negative side to this phrase. And I specifically take issue with the word new. So creative is the new targeting, because it's not the new targeting. It's always been a really critical part of the targeting strategy. So for example, and I'm making this up as a hypothetical, but let's say we're running ads for a client and they run CRM software for accountants. And let's talk about their targeting strategy for a minute, because yes, they could try and target people who are accountants and looking for CRM software, but that audience is going to be tiny. So actually what we're more likely to do is, yes, do that, but also look for people searching for CRM software and try and call out the accountants in that space. And then also look for people who are accountants and offer them CRM software ads. So hopefully you get where I'm coming from. Creative is not the new targeting. It's actually always been a part of that core targeting strategy.
100%. So when we were first talking about creating this episode, we realized that there were a number of different situations we had with clients that would help illustrate this point. So here's 3 different examples that will help give some context. And the point that we're trying to make here is that creativity isn't just important for brand and marketing comms. It also has an impact on commercially relevant data as well. So let me kick things off with the first story. We were working with an animation and illustration studio running their ads. Great people, great brand, and they were really working hard on building out a great culture as well. And their office dog, Ruby, was a big part of that. Now, she wasn't just any old office dog. She had her own profile on the website with a job title and everything, and the team and clients loved her. And with so much design talent in-house, it just made sense that they made their own ad creative here. To showcase their genuinely great company culture here, they made Ruby front and center of the ads. We consulted on the process and it made a ton of sense. It sounded like a great way to inject a ton of personality in, and in quite a samey space, we thought it would stand out quite a bit. At the very minimum, it would be a great test. And it looked like an instant success. The front end metrics were really good here. They had great engagement, a low CPC, and most importantly, the inquiry volume was really high, with low cost per inquiry. But something about it all was just a little bit odd. Over 95% of the leads were from a very specific type of business. Dog walkers, pet food brands, dog grooming services, anything dog related, you name it, they were coming through the ads. And this couldn't have been for any other reason than Ruby being front and center on those ads. So while this wasn't necessarily a bad thing, we were definitely looking for a bigger spread of businesses and a few larger businesses as well. So obviously we got some new creatives in play quickly. But this demonstrates just how influential the creative is, not from just clicks to conversions, but also the type of businesses that convert as well.
I always love hearing about that one. It's such a direct example. Now, this second client story is in the talent attraction space. We were running recruitment campaigns for a large client in the finance industry. And this insight specifically comes from their early careers advertising program, where we tested two different types of creative. One creative was geared around kind of the California CEO kind of vibe. So people on a beach around campfires, dressed down, that kind of scene. And the second was much more candid photography, but based in a corporate environment, so more suited and booted. And to be honest with you, we were really confident that the more casual creative would win out, because that's really kind of getting towards the pinnacle of your career, isn't it? The more casual you can dress, the more senior you are. And so that's why we were really confident that that kind of creative line would win out. But the results of that test just goes to show how important experimenting is, because surprisingly, and yeah, you probably guessed it, the more corporate version won. And whereas we were pretty convinced that that was more of a tired and stayed approach, actually it turns out that by targeting people in their early careers, we were targeting typically university students, and they already had that kind of casual lifestyle. And so they were really looking forward to getting suited and booted and joining the career ladder.
It's back to that point you made about being open to being proven wrong, and then being able to pivot your approach. Now, the last story is from the automotive space. A number of years back, we had a client that was promoting electric vehicles, and they had the highest female visitorship to their website within the industry. Now, what they didn't want to happen is for the ads to jeopardize that in any way, shape, or form. Now, we tried weighting this using the gender-specific targeting on the platforms, but we found that it got more expensive overall. And also, not all traffic is gendered on all the ad platforms. Like in Google, a huge percentage is gender unknown. But we figured out an alternative. We had been running with two different ad messaging strategies. The first was more technical and specification-led, and the other was more real-world, real-use cases-led. Both were quite informative styles. One was more about the car, and the other was more about the driver and how it fits in with their life. After doing a deep dive on the different messaging strategies here, we quickly found that the more technical messaging had a much higher engagement rate with a male audience, and the more real-world focused messaging had a much higher engagement rate with a female audience. So naturally, rather than skewing gender targeting in the settings, it was so much more effective to run more ads that resonated better with a female audience. And it was also a strategy that was more effective at maintaining a strong female visitorship to the website.
So there you go. 3 real-world stories that show just how important creative really is, right the way down to the commercial end of things. I guess the key message from this episode is that if your creative isn't attracting the right kind of people, well, no amount of tactical optimization is ever going to fix that. And that's becoming more and more important over time as the ad platforms themselves evolve. It's why working with conscientious marketing partners matters more than ever, whether that's in-house or the agency you're working with. You need people in your corner who care more than just about managing ads, people who go strategy first, people who listen to and interpret the data, people who think commercially, and also people who can course correct when things don't go to plan. Because ad creative doesn't just play a role in converting clicks into inquiries, it also has a major say on the profile of lead that's sitting in your pipeline.
And I think that just about wraps it up. If you took something useful from this episode, please leave a review and share your biggest takeaway. It really helps us spread the word.
Also, if you have a specific question or there's a topic that you'd like us to cover, please go ahead and let us know at webmarketeruk.com/topic. We read every single message. Thanks so much for listening. Catch you next time.